And I think this is the point where the bad porn music will stop playing, and that means we're live. So happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out to join us. We hope that you're having a great start to your weekend. We have a very special, very exciting discussion that we're going to be having tonight with two very interesting people. You probably know their names. They've been around YouTube for quite a while. And I think we're going to have a pretty interesting discussion tonight. But before we do that, as always, we have just a couple of announcements. April the 24th, on a Tuesday at 6 o'clock, we will be joined by Matt Dillahunty and Inspiring Philosophy. And the two of them will be having a discussion on, is religion a positive influence in society today? That will be at 6 o'clock, again on Tuesday, April the 24th. You can join us tomorrow evening as well at 9 o'clock for a debate. And Steve, I believe that is on, remind me.
Which one?
With Wayne Fillmore. And
that'll be on 9 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday.
Right. And then on Sunday, we're going to be doing something a little different at 9 o'clock with our live show. There have been some, we're kind of touching into the pseudo science a little bit on this Sunday, but we're going to do something with UFOs, not alien related, so we won't be going that far off into the deep end, but something interesting nonetheless. So that will do it for the announcements. I will turn it over to Steve to introduce our guests and the topic for tonight.
Hey, welcome everybody. Hey, tonight we have King Crocoduck, a well-known YouTuber, and we also have Red Pill Religion, also known as Max Kolbe, another well-known theist YouTuber. So we have an atheist and theist. I'm going to be talking about the justification of faith. Specifically, is faith-based positions ever justifiable, whether it be the position of theism, whether the position of holding to religion, or even the position of atheism, whatever they wish to discuss. And like always, this is going to be one of the free-form type organic discussions like we always have, where it won't be heavily moderated. We'll basically step in when we need clarification or if they get stuck on a specific topic or things of that nature, just to foster it along. Hopefully, toward the end, if we have time, we can get some Q&A. If you want to send it to us, the Twitter is in the video description. Just let us know via tweets, and we'll try to get the questions answered. The time expectancy for this is about 90 minutes due to some time constraints. However, we'll see if we can kind of push back there a little bit, but it's going to be about 90 minutes. So with that, I want each person to kind of introduce themselves, tell them about your channels a little bit and your positions. And we're going to start off with King Crocoduck. By the way, welcome back, KC.
Thanks for having me. Well, as many of you know, I'm an atheist on YouTube. Most of my videos are concerned with teaching science and debunking pseudoscience. But since, it's also an atheist channel, I do take the position that there is no good reason or good evidence to believe in the existence of a God. That's sort of the long and short of it.
Okay. And then Red Pill Religion, you have the opposite position. So you want to tell us about yourself, your channel, and what your position is.
Sure thing. My legal name is Dean Esme, which I don't use online, but some people do, and so you might know me from that. I've temporarily changed the Red Pill Religion channel name back to Dean Esme, simply because I'm involved in some publicity stuff now where that name's going to be useful. If anybody cares, it's because I was in something called Red Pill Movie, and that's a great movie, by the way. But I actually do prefer Max, and most of my friends do call me that. So, and we started out, we called our project Escaping Atheism, which meant things on multiple levels. But then, of course, we realized there was more to talk about than just atheism as a social and cultural phenomenon. We changed the name to Red Pill Religion because we do also talk about topics like science, science fiction, history, nerd culture, nationalist versus globalist politics, and all that sort of thing. We firmly believe that religion and politics can never be separated, and any effort to do so is inherently totalitarian and wrong. And certainly we believe religion is a good thing. We're also very much critics of the atheist community, the atheist movement, and a lot of it is comedy, a lot of it is a sardonic humor. We do actually ape people like Christopher Hitchens and other online atheists that we see, because apparently that style is appealing to certain people, and we're finding that we're enjoying it and we're getting more and more of an audience for it. Yes, sometimes we're provocative. We're shit posters. I'm not completely unlike someone like Jimmy Medicare, although I don't always do things his way either. I'm a shit poster. I'm a firebrand. We're actually a team. There's, oh God, I've lost count of official team members. It's something like 15. Many of us former atheists, not all of us Christians. Some of us, we got Hindus, we got Jews, we got atheists who like us. And one of our volunteers is an atheist who's tired of the atheist movement, and he thinks we make good points and he thinks we're funny. So, that's what we're all about. And come on by anytime. So,
well, you know what? I think that's a great segue just to have Casey jump on in on any one of those things.
This is going to be good.
Stand back, people. Let's do it.
What am I meant to jump on?
Well, anything that
I don't know.
About. You can jump right into the fact that obviously he accepts religion and politics are intertwined. You can jump on whether it's honest to have a faith-based position of any kind, whether it be dealing with religion, whether it deals with theism. Obviously, he takes the position that theism is justifiable, and you would take the position that theism or religion is unjustifiable.
Well, I want to clarify that my position when it comes to whether religion is justified or not is an epistemic position. It's based on whether we have sufficient knowledge to be able to make the kinds of claims that religion makes, whether those claims are justified. My position, I'm leaving out the utility of religion, whether religion is useful to society or whether it's a good or bad thing. I think that's a separate issue. So that's not. So, it could be the case that religion is true but bad for society, and it could be the case that religion is not true but good for society. So I sort of keep these things distinct. But yeah, I take the position, the position that I mainly work with is that there is no good reason and no good evidence to believe in religious claims.
Well,
and Max, can you counter?
Yeah, there's all kinds of evidence for all kinds of those things, and it's inherently dishonest for somebody to say that there is not evidence for all those things. What you always mean, without exception, is that you personally are not convinced. You have no scientific basis for these assertions. You have no particular evidence-based reasons for these assertions that I've seen. Now, I haven't watched too many of your videos in depth, Crocoduck, but I do find that I can routinely, by myself or with friends, usually debunk claim after claim after claim made by atheists in their YouTube videos and in their forums and even in their books. They're easily debunked. They're easily skewered. Atheism is an ideological movement and a cult religious movement that converts you. They call it deconverting, but they mostly, quote unquote, deconvert you by lying about history, lying about what religion's real record is, lying about the rational reasons for the spiritual and the supernatural. It's very much a cult and very much an intolerant cult if you get into it, because they will hurt you if you try, and they will hurt you if you just reject the multiple presuppositions and assertions that they make about the universe, including their claims about science, which are frequently also easily skewered. So, that's a lot, but that's an answer on all of that. Religion is good. Atheism is demonstrably toxic to the culture and to society and is an ideology. And it's an ideological cult movement. And that I say that as a former atheist who was stunned to see that it was like that. But that is exactly how I saw it. And that is what made me begin questioning in the first place whether atheism really made sense. And I don't think that it does.
Very well, then. I shall intolerantly await with bated breath for the good evidence and reasons for the existence of the supernatural and God specifically.
Which do you want? Maybe we should start with the supernatural first. This has been understood for thousands of years and is not new. The reality is clearly divided into those things which are physical, or what we might call the visible, and the invisible. To put it in modernist terms, the natural, the terms what modernists would understand, the natural is that which obeys the laws of physics. The supernatural is that which is beyond the laws of physics and not subject to them. We know many such things do exist that are beyond the laws of physics and nevertheless real.
Just to clarify really quickly, I just want to clarify, your ontology is one of dualism or idealism?
I'd have to think about it, but I would have to say probably I come down as an idealist.
Okay.
Nevertheless, I just gave you definitions that any person can understand. That which is not subject to the laws of physics is what we define as supernatural. And there's plenty of supernatural things you all believe in, and the easiest ones everybody knows are mathematics and logic itself, which have no physical basis, cannot be produced through physical processes. Physical processes observably obey the laws of things like logic and mathematics. Logic and mathematics are not subject to the physical. We also have science. I mean, I'm not here with a list of peer-reviewed references and books and
before
things.
You move on, could I address that? Because it seems that by that criteria, we could say that language is supernatural.
Yes, we would also say that the human mind is supernatural, which it is.
Why do you say that?
We have copious and abundant evidence that the mind cannot possibly be merely the emergent effect, which is an ideological materialist buzzword for it just kind of magically goes that way. There's no scientific evidence at all for the proposition that your mind is simply the result of neurochemistry and wiring. And we have ample and abundant evidence that your mind contains numerous elements, including your will, your perception, the binding of all your senses together into a cognitive whole is supernatural. That is, it is happening outside of or beyond the laws of physics. And there's no reason to think that there aren't things that operate outside the laws of physics. And there's no good reason to believe the ludicrous fairy tale that your mind is merely the emergent effects of electrochemistry. You got no science to back that up whatsoever. In fact, all the existing science makes it clear that that's an impossibility.
Could you give an example of what science says this is an impossibility? You mentioned something about the interaction inside of the brain.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me make clear that I don't believe your brain is your mind. I believe your brain interacts with your mind and uses your brain. Your mind uses your brain. And again, we have evidence for that, quite a bit of it. And
could I have an example of this evidence?
Sure. The copious peer-reviewed literature on near-death experience is very easy for people to go digest. I especially recommend the work of Dr. Jeffrey Long, who has the most comprehensive data set on it anybody's imagined and is fully peer-reviewed and does indeed show that anybody who's a medical expert cannot explain those experiences away in the cheap, easy way that the professional skeptics so often do. We also have evidence in neurobiology and a lot of brain research. And I can give you evidence. I can give you references for that. I didn't know that's what we were coming armed for, but I have plenty of references for that. Any assertion that you can get the human mind down to electrochemistry is a positive belief that demands evidence, and the evidence isn't on your side. And if we do have things that work outside of time and space, and we have every reason to think that we do, and no reason to think they don't, then it is also entirely plausible that there are what we might call spiritual beings who have no physicality. Just like mathematics, logic, and your own mind are not entirely, at least your mind is not entirely bound to your physicality, although it is clearly somewhat bound to your physicality. But you know, what's an easy one? Go to look at the NDE data, because I can not only show you the peer-reviewed data on that, I can show you how it's been shown that ideological atheist skeptics literally misrepresent the scientific data. Well, we have every reason to think there's an afterlife.
Okay, I wish you would have brought that with you, but let's take a step back to this claim that mathematics and logic are supernatural.
Yeah.
And language as well. I disagree. I think that these are conventions. These are things that we invented. They did not just fall out of the sky.
I agree, because they require supernatural something beyond to make them exist. Your claim that they can be explained other ways is just a claim. It's just a belief position you have. It is a faith position, in fact.
No, my position is based on an understanding of the history of the development of mathematics and of logic.
I don't accept your expertise on the matter. I have considerable expertise in the history of mathematics and logic, and I immediately challenge that ludicrous assertion. The history of mathematics and logic makes it very clear that we've known for thousands of years and viewed things like logic and mathematics as supernatural. Fairly modernists.
Okay, they've been viewed as supernatural, but the question is, are they supernatural? We're here to establish not how things have been viewed, but how things actually are.
All right. Well, that's fair enough. I will give you a couple of references right now. I don't know how to send them to you. Please see the copious fully peer-reviewed scientific data on nderf.org, which is Jeffrey Long's site. And here's a link to an interview of Dr. Long by Alex Tsaris of Skeptico, who's fantastic, by the way, and I highly recommend him, even though he's not a Christian. And Dr. Long even goes into how ideological skeptics literally misrepresent the science and can't back up the claims they make when they try to so-called debunk this material. And so I would encourage
this material being mathematics or near-death experiences, because Long
near-death experience, because you said you were afraid, you were sorry I didn't bring the references. All right, there's two. I've got more if anybody wants any. Just reach out to us.
Okay, but I asked specifically about the mathematics. Does he discuss? Sorry.
What about the mathematics then? I'm sorry.
So the discussion turned to mathematics and the evidence that this is supernatural. So
give me evidence that it comes out of natural processes. It does not. It is.
No, I'm saying we invented it. I'm saying we invented mathematics and we invented logic.
Well, okay, and that is a really extraordinary claim. I need some evidence, please.
Sure, we're still inventing new mathematics and new logics.
No, you have not invented logic, sir. You've come up with ever more elaborate and different ways of applying logic and mathematics. You can't say that the human mind produces mathematics.
Yes, I can, because many of the mathematics and logics that are being produced are mutually contradictory. Modal logic is not necessarily compatible with quantum logic. Trivariable logic is not compatible with binary logic.
You've got different ways of expressing logic. Are you literally suggesting that the human mind somehow imposes logic on the universe?
No, that's the idealist position. My position is that we use logic in order to describe what exists in the universe, that we use these in the same manner that we use language. We come up with a set of rules and we consistently apply them. And these rules can come and go. Ditto with mathematics. Whatever axioms you produce in mathematics, take something everybody knows about, like multiplicative commutativity. It's just A times B equals B times A. This doesn't, even though intuitively this seems to apply, and this is something we learned in grade school, this doesn't always apply. There are situations where A times B does not equal B times A, as with matrices.
So let me, I shouldn't interrupt. Go ahead and finish.
Well, the point is, what mathematics and logic ultimately are a set of rules that we develop, and the rules can be completely arbitrary. We can make them up however we want, and as long as we just consistently apply them, we're following the rules. We're doing that particular maths, that particular logic. It's effectively a language game.
Can I quote you on that? Because that's one of the most extraordinary things I've heard a human being claim in my life. I'll get to with some of my friends who are math experts, but I just flat don't believe you, so I don't know how to help you here. You're actually suggesting the universe does not operate on logical mathematical principles. That we simply
I'm saying that the logical math.
Because you've found other variant ways of doing your calculations in the maths, and especially in the theoretical maths.
And applied maths. These are mutually contradictory means of expressing certain things.
And so you say, and so you accept that the universe works that way, or is our understanding of the math just poor there?
No, the math, our understanding of the math is as good as it can be. And the math can be applied in order to understand various aspects of the universe. The point is, in different regimes, you have to apply mutually contradictory maths. To speak of the universe as though it were governed by a single consistent kind of logic, rather than being composed of certain regularities in nature, which we then codify with our theories and with our mathematical descriptions, is mistaken.
I just don't believe you. I find these claims to be rather extraordinary. Just because
I'll give you an example.
No. If you've developed specialty maths that work in certain contexts and others, and not others, that doesn't mean that we get to make math up as we go, and that we get to apply that on the universe.
Yeah, we do, though. The mathematical departments in the history of, if you know the history of math, then you'll know that. Then you'll know that linear algebra was developed either at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, and that shortly after its development, it was applied with spectacular results to quantum mechanics, later to computation as well. So, prior prior to that, it didn't exist. And the non-Euclidean geometry was, well, Gauss said that he invented it, but the first person to publish it was another guy. That was in the mid-1800s, and then about 50, 60 years later, Einstein comes out with general relativity, and this relies on differential geometry. This relies on non-Euclidean geometry. These mathematics are not consistent with the mathematics that we use in other contexts. You have to change the axioms. You cannot get from one language to another language. You can't derive non-Euclidean geometry from Euclidean geometry. You have to change the underlying axioms. So to speak of the universe as though it operates under a single set of mathematical rules rather than a plurality of mutually contradictory mathematical rules is mistaken, or at least can be described by means of mutually contradictory mathematical rules. I don't think math is woven into the fabric of space and time. So that's sort of the long and short of it.
Yeah, I simply don't believe a single thing you're saying there for the most part. I mean, some of your facts are right. Some of them I really doubt. I'll have to get back with some of my math buddies to see if, I mean, your notion that just because specialty maths can be developed, that the underlying reality of the universe does not follow mathematical principles, that's a belief you have without justification.
Let me make my position 100% clear. What I'm saying is that the universe does have underlying regularities, or at least appears to have underlying regularities, and this is the reason we can do science. That's right. And we are able to formalize our observations of these regularities in mathematical terms. That doesn't mean that the math actually exists out there somewhere. This is a map territory confusion.
It's not a confusion. It's just an assertion you're making about math. Most smart people have thought for thousands of years, with no evidence that it's changed, that the universe works under logical principles that we don't control, and that mathematics is basically a development of logic, and we may go wrong somewhere with our math, and our theoretical maths may not turn out right. But I'm sorry, I'm with Plato on all this. Math.
But Platonism is known to be wrong, though.
It's not. Math is in no way. You can't show it as an outgrowth of electrochemical processes. You're describing developing specialty maths as if that changes the underlying logical reality of the universe. The universe operates.
I'm sorry. What's this distinction between specialty maths and maths? I'm not really sure what you mean by that.
You don't know what specialty maths are, then I'm not sure how to help you. How much do you actually know about math?
Quite a bit.
I mean, I'm not a math whiz, but I know mathematicians and I know historians and people with degrees in philosophies of science.
Okay. I'm asking where you demarcate between math and specialty math.
Oh.
What's the distinction that you draw? What are the criteria that one meets that the other does not?
Oh, I don't know. I will have to get back to you. I know that certain maths do get applied in certain areas that don't apply in certain other areas, and certain techniques are developed for doing things like what you're talking about. And,
okay.
And it was interesting.
So how do you know? Hang on. How do you know that what you don't call specialty maths, maybe presumably normal math, elementary school math? How do you know that this primary school math is not one of the specialty maths, and one of the so-called specialty maths is one of the more fundamental maths? I mean, what's
all the math? All the maths are attempts by humans to describe the underlying orderliness we see in reality.
I agree.
And that underlying orderliness cannot be an outgrowth of physical processes. You have no evidence for that claim, and that's an extraordinary claim. Just like it's a position and a claim you're making that somehow you can deny that the universe predictably works on mathematical principles just because you can develop maths that work in some contexts and not others. I'm sorry, I'm finding that very hard to believe, and I know a number of mathematicians and scientists who would have a similar hard time believing it. So this sounds like a philosophical position you take, but I hope you don't try to say that it's scientific or that it's simple factual when it is in fact only your opinion.
This is not only my opinion. This is the dominant philosophical position. Mathematical Platonism has been kicked out of the door long ago. There are still naive Platonists roaming around here and there is mostly irrelevant.
There's two more claims I don't believe you on, Mr. Ideological Atheist, and I'm sorry, but these are ideological claims.
You can look up your survey of choice of philosophers. There's a set of questions.
No, thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay,
no, thank you.
So you don't want the evidence. You can look it up. Look up what the
I want the evidence, but I'm already impeaching the evidence of surveys of philosophers. That's garbage evidence that doesn't prove anything. And Platonists are all over the place.
Hold on. My claim is that that Platonism has been kicked out of the door for a while now. That claim is supported by that claim is supported by the existence of these surveys. I'm not saying these surveys prove that the position is correct. I'm saying these surveys prove that the dominantly held view is the one that contradicts yours. So the fact that you don't believe me, you think I'm making it up, whatever, that's your position. Different people have different positions. Just understand. And I'm not saying this is evidence against your position. Just understand your position is not the dominant position held by the philosophers.
But it's coming back real fast because scientific naturalists are on their way out the door because scientific naturalism isn't science and has run out of gas.
Well, of course, scientific naturalism isn't science. It's a philosophical position.
And held again
by the majority of philosophers of science. So, I mean...
Yeah. And they're on their way out and graying out because they're failures for the most part. And it has much to do with the cultural Marxists take over the universities because they are ideological atheists who prefer things that way. But I'm sorry, when you look at I will mention again, the majority of Nobel laureates in physics today alive are Christians. And they will all tell you that's because the Christian worldview makes more sense for science, not less. Because in my view, it absolutely does. And I'm not the only one who thinks so.
Well, I would expect that the majority of Nobel laureates in science are Christians, as the Western nations are predominantly Christian. You'll find, though, that a disproportionately large number of them are atheists. So this is not in your favor. This argument.
Oh, I'm afraid that it's very much in my argument. I'm not backing down from it. The majority of Nobel physicists are Christians because Christians are better at science than atheists on the whole. And I truly believe that to be true. History.
But look at the proportions.
And there's literal. What about proportions? A lot of those Nobel laureates, like the guy who did the Human Genome Project, what's his name? People are ashamed to talk to him because he's a Christian, and it's ridiculous.
Hold on. Are you saying Francis Collins has a Nobel Prize? I wasn't aware of this.
Not Francis Collins. Is it somebody? Am I thinking there was? I just saw my biochemist buddy Cy Gart, the former atheist. Himself was just tweeting not too long ago about one of his scientist friends who's a Christian who does have a Nobel. Maybe it's not the Human Genome Project guy.
I'm not saying there aren't Christians in science and that Christians are not able to be good at science. Of course there are. I work with a number of them. And what you're saying about Christians, people not wanting to talk to them, is simply not true. It is absolutely true based on multiple scientists I know and have interviewed. So please don't lie like that. Atheists are real bullies in the What was your sample size? If you're accusing me of lying, I want to see your data. What was your sample size of your interviews? Your friend Joe from across the street.
No, I'm not doing this. I'm not playing the atheist game. You just claim that scientists being harassed for being Christians is simply not true. No,
I didn't say that. I said, hold on. I didn't say that.
It's a widespread problem. And many
yes, that's what I said is not going on.
I don't.
Does it exist
without
somewhere?
Evidence that it's not going on, but I have considerable testimony and experience that it is true. And so, unless we're ready to do a survey,
the experiences you have
versus the experiences you have no data to back your claim up either.
You're the one making the positive claim. You say that there is a plague of discrimination happening against Christians among scientists. I want to see your evidence for that.
That it's not.
Sorry?
You want me to bring in witnesses? Fine, but you don't get to declare something is not true.
I don't care about witnesses. Hold on. I don't care about witnesses. I want to see the data. Witnesses only matter to the extent that you're doing an actual study on the matter. If you bring your friend Joe from across the street over to testify, I once saw in my laboratory a Christian was being made fun of. Good for him, but that's not representative of the scientific community.
No, because you are absolutely making the positive claim that this is not happening, and I
have never made that claim. I said that you don't have the evidence to make that claim.
I do have the evidence to make that claim. You're arbitrarily dismissing the evidence and making up rules of evidence as you go along to suit
I'm making up the rules that you need a large sample size in order to establish a trend? I made that up.
If you want me to establish... No. It is widely observable that many Christians say this is true and perceive it. You have no evidence that it's not true, and I don't have a positive burden to prove it any more than you have a positive burden to disprove it. I believe it based on evidence I find satisfactory from knowing a lot of scientists and doing a lot of reading. I'm not the magic man. If you assert that it's not happening, you have also made a claim.
I'm not asserting that it didn't happen for the third time now. I'm saying that you haven't presented the evidence that it happened. I don't care what Joe from across the street says. Show me the studies. Show me your data.
No, I have no such obligation to do that for you, sir. You're not the arbiter of truth and the arbiter of morality.
I don't claim to be the arbiter of truth or morality. I claim to be somebody who holds to a certain standard of evidence. I'm an evidentialist. I'm not just going to take this stuff on face. If you're going to slander the scientific community on this, I insist you provide the data. Data or GTFO.
No, fuck you. My data is as good as your data, sir, and we have ample and abundant evidence to believe that what I just said is true based on the testimony of numerous scientists and casual observation. Since there is no data on this question scientific, we are both reduced to nothing but opinions. But my personal experience... But my personal
why don't you fund a study? Why not just fund the study? I presume. Hold on. I presume you have a large audience. And you were part of this Red Pill movie, which, by the way, I enjoyed. You can very easily crowdfund whatever amount of money is necessary. $2,000, $4,000, $8,000, whatever it is. Fund a study that's going to check for bias against Christians among scientists. And if you can find that there's a statistically significant amount of bias going on, whatever tools you decide to use, Pearson, whatever, go ahead and show it then. But if your entire assertion is based on your lived experience, your anecdotal testimonies, then your slanders of the scientific community are irrelevant to me.
Okay. Your lie that it's a slander of the scientific community demands evidence. Your assertion that your suggestion that this assertion is not true unless I do a study to your satisfaction. I'm sorry, prove to me there's not a problem. The atheist community itself has a serious bigotry problem and a serious pseudoscience problem.
Okay, atheist community. Hold on. We're talking about the scientific community. I'm not talking about the atheist community.
And I'm sorry, my evidence comes from multiple books and talking to multiple people, not just my personal lived experience, although you don't get to dismiss that either. I'm sorry.
I do that. I say it to the SJWs and I say it to you. Your lived experience doesn't mean jack shit. I want to see the data.
Your lived experience claiming that there's no widespread problem.
I didn't say there is no widespread problem. I said that if you're going to claim that there is a widespread problem, the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate it.
I have no such burden of proof. I don't have to prove anything to you, just like I don't have to prove God exists, even though God's existence is a well-proven and well-evidenced proposition. I don't have anything to prove to a person who's making it clear he doesn't even want to have the conversation. He just wants to start arbitrarily demanding evidence for any random assertion, and if the evidence is not to his liking, then we get to dismiss it. Sorry, you don't get to...
I have standards. That's the problem. And it's because I have standards that I am an atheist.
Right, which is, okay, you have your standards as an atheist, which at least you admit is an ideological position, which more people should. But I'm sorry.
I have standards for what constitutes justified belief in something. So if that makes me an ideologue, then guilty is charged. But let's hear about your evidentiary standards. Are you saying there is no problem until I prove that it's there to your satisfaction? There may very well be a problem until there may very well be a problem that I'm not aware of. Just as there may very well be. Well, there are things that exist that I'm not aware of. There are problems in physics that are unresolved and may be unresolved forever. And these things may exist independently of our knowledge of them. But I don't, if they're not ever going to be resolved, then they're not particularly relevant to my belief system. So, there has to be some standard of evidence. There has to be some kind of filter in order to filter out the crap from the good information. Yeah, but merely taking you seem to I would guess you're kind of a Popperian and into falsification and that sort of thing. Well, I do admire Karl Popper.
You seem to be starting with the presumption that it's not true if you can't just, if you can't. I mean, it's not true until we find a study that finds it's true.
That's not my position.
Okay, so how about we back off? How about we just back out and say that discrimination toward Christians does exist in the sciences? Because surely you agree that.
Let's make sure that you are allowing people to actually finish their sentence, because
we're
a little bit of interrupting going on. So
I'm sorry.
It's both.
You know what? I'm going to start I'm going to start muting when Crocoduck talks and not interrupt him. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay. I don't have anything to add. You can go ahead and finish the thought.
It seems to me that your evidentiary standards are entirely arbitrary and your own, sir. I don't think you. I mean, and just immediately grabbing on a remark somebody makes and saying, "Prove that like that." Well, I can do that to you all day too, and on quite a few things. I will repeat: we have abundant evidence that there is a God, and it's irrational to say we do not have evidence that there's a God. That's a ridiculous claim. We have lots of evidence that there is a God.
But I haven't seen it yet.
Well, then you haven't been looking very hard, pretty clearly.
I have. In fact, I've taken your recommendation from one of your videos and actually watched through Inspiring Philosophies, The Science of the Soul.
So you would be lying.
And hold on.
Wait, let me make my point. So
I haven't finished making mine though. I didn't.
He was actually King Crocoduck was in the middle of a point. Let him make that.
My bad.
Yeah.
Whatever claim you were making about the atheist community and getting their science wrong or whatever, you and whatever biases you attribute to a member of the atheist community, there are a lot more going on with Inspiring Philosophy. I have about 4 pages of notes from just those videos going over where he misrepresented or omitted important information when it came to the sources that he was citing in order to make his case. But I whatever your standard of evidence is, your filters are open too wide. It's allowing the crap in if you're going to endorse these videos by IP. As an example, I'm only throwing this particular thing out because we're trying to get to this talk about the evidence for the existence of the supernatural, the existence of God. This was one thing that you endorsed, so that's sort of the direction I just took just now.
Okay. So you make the rather ludicrous claim that the video is full of errors. We'll look forward to your presentation of that. I don't believe you, and anybody who does believe you, by the way, is taking you on faith.
They don't have to, though.
No, because they could look at the data and draw their own conclusions without you steering them and misrepresenting it. Potentially misrepresenting it, either on purpose or not on purpose, but just because you're an ideologue with blinders on. I can provide far more data than those Inspiring Philosophy videos, but I will merely point out to anybody listening is that if you take his belief that that there is no evidence, you're lying, because we do have evidence. The only question is what evidence you find convincing, and I don't see any reason to believe that Crocoduck is more qualified to evaluate the evidence than the average person who is even moderately scientifically literate, and quite a few scientists who are all a good bit more literate on these issues than Crocoduck will not be on his side. It is beyond hubris to assert that if you don't personally find something convincing, there's no evidence at all. I'm sorry, but that's a lie every time it comes out of an atheist's mouth, and it's an ideological position.
Max, what would you offer if you had to offer one thing to King Crocoduck as evidence? What would you promote? What would you actually push forward as the single strongest piece of evidence to support your position?
Oh, I wouldn't take the bait and answer it. I wouldn't give it to him. My lengthy experience is, as with anything deep that requires a lot of thought and a lot of introspection, different things convince different people. So let's pretend that I thought, for example, that Bernie Sanders was the best presidential candidate in 2016. I'm going to make that conclusion based on a wide variety of evidence that you may not share, or you and I might both like Bernie, but we have different reasons for why we concluded that he was the best choice. I genuinely think that if you look at contemporary science, you can look at the Big Bang Theory, the cosmological constant, the NDE data, the digital physics theory of the universe, and quite a few other areas indeed, and conclude that the most rational, parsimonious, and evidence-based conclusion is that a driving intelligence is running things, like we're in a video game. It makes perfect sense, it's elegant, it's logical, it's not at all unscientific. It's beyond science, since it's measuring something immaterial, but it's not at all unscientific. It's not at all superstitious. It's not at all irrational. It's an evidence-based conclusion. You get to come to whatever conclusion you want. But to assert that nobody's got any evidence and that anybody who looks at this evidence includes, yeah, there's probably a God or something like a God, is insane, stupid, or doesn't understand science, nonsense.
There seems to be a confusion here. I just want to clarify. I said at the beginning that there's no good evidence, no good reason to believe in the existence of a God.
It's entirely your own justification. What do you mean good? You've got some kind of ultimate standard on that? You've got better
I don't know what an ultimate standard is, but I do have an epistemology, an evidence-based epistemology.
And as you know, different people use different epistemologies.
Sure. And when that happens, when that happens, then we have to take a step back and talk about the philosophy and be able to discuss, which epistemology might potentially produce better results. So I don't know. What are your epistemic commitments? Because I'm principally an evidentialist.
I'm an evidentialist too, and I'm a skeptic. I merely noted that all you have to do is realize that atheism is a proposition because it is, and is a belief and is a faith position because it is, that atheism is in fact not evidence-based at all because it isn't. And from there, I began thinking, okay, if atheism doesn't make sense, what does? And now I came to my conclusions the way I did. But I mean, I did honestly conclude, I literally left atheism because I concluded this makes no sense at all. And to presume that, basically you appear to be a presuppositional atheist, and there is such a thing. That mostly goes back to Anthony Flew in the 70s. But
let's clarify real quick, because I don't want any straw man going on. Can you clarify your own position, Casey, on what you accept as atheism?
Yeah, my position, just as an atheist, is simply that I haven't seen. So I'm going to clarify. I haven't seen any good evidence or any good reason to believe in a God. When I say that it doesn't exist, that's based on what I've been presented with. As I said, it may very well be the case that there are a lot of things that I haven't been presented with that are true. This is not some statement about some ultimate standard of reality or saying that my standards are the ones that everyone should conform to and that everyone who disagrees with me is an idiot. I'm simply saying that based on my standards of what constitutes good evidence and what constitutes good reason, I have not been presented with any good evidence or good reason to believe in a God.
Okay. I've been presented all sorts of evidence that I find very good evidence, and I find the claim that there is no good evidence to be, basically your opinion, and you're allowed to have it. But I'm skeptical. Of evidence, and I'm skeptical of those who try to claim that there is no good evidence. I truly am, because I find the evidence very good, and I know science pretty good, and I know a lot of scientists. I find evidence pretty good here, especially when you contemplate anything else, other explanations, which are far less likely and usually multiply entities like mad just to escape the fundamental idea that intelligence runs the universe.
Why do you think intelligence runs the universe?
Why do I think it? Well,
yes.
If we go aside all the contemporary science, like the digital physics theory and the cosmological constant and so on, we have what we have had for thousands of years. We have all the classical arguments for God, which are all valid as far as I can see. I'm not a big fan of Kalam. It's weak. If you go look at Peter Kreeft's 20 proofs, those are all good. If you read Ed Fazer's 5 proofs of God, those are all solid as far as I know. It even strikes me as a little odd that you would say you have to be presented with evidence. Don't you have an obligation to go looking for it and to seek learned sources on the matter?
Sure, but these things don't fall out of the sky. Somebody somewhere is presenting an argument. Somebody somewhere is presenting a case. And so when I go somewhere, when I look up Inspiring Philosophy's videos, for example, and I'm presented with his arguments which you presumably think constitute good evidence, based on the fact that you endorsed it, I find that it's completely filled to the brim with problems and misrepresentations of what's in the literature.
If you're going to slander him with misrepresentation, I really want to see that, and that is a personal individual, not a whole group of people. You're going to slander him with that. Put that online, and we'll look at it. I'm not even going to talk about it anymore because I can't comment on it. You're just claiming that this is so and that he's misrepresenting the data. And I, for the record, don't believe you. But
I can give you one example. I'll give you one example.
I'd almost rather you not, because I would have to take it and digest it and come back for it. But okay, you give it, but I probably won't respond to it. I'll have to think about it. And by the way, take it back to Mike to talk to him about it, and talk to other people I know to see if your criticism has any validity. Well, go ahead and name it, but I'm not going to,
Sure. His discussion of Dr. Schwartz's mental force. The claim is that simply by using the power of our minds, we can change our cognition. We simply have to, his claim was that Schwartz, in his cognitive behavioral therapy with his OCD patients, was training them to use their minds in order to manipulate their brain structure, and that this is evidence that the mind precedes the brain. But he misrepresented this and related data. What actually goes on, it's not cognitive therapy; it's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not just changing the way that the patients think; it's also changing their behavior and changing the things that they do. The key here, as with all neuroplasticity, is that there has to be experience, that there has to be some sort of data input from the world that you interact with in order for this to actually work. Yeah. He names 4 parts to his therapy: relabeling, reattributing, refocusing, and revaluing. The third one, refocusing, involves wholesome, productive activity for at least 15 minutes. This is effectively resocialization. This is training people while they're thinking whatever it is he's training them to think, to have a particular experience. And this experience is what changes the structure of the brain, not just whatever mental activity is going on. You can't put somebody in a dark room and have them think happy thoughts and then suddenly good things are going to happen. That has, if you're going to exploit neuroplasticity, there has to be interaction with the world. So the argument is bad. The mind does not. This is not evidence that mind precedes the brain.
I'm tempted to jump on it, but the smart thing to do would be to go back and look at it, and see if you have a point. So, what's the time point on here? Where are we? I'll have to remember. Right around.
We're literally at an hour, I believe. And
I 54 minutes. I just got to remember where it is, because I'll cut that, in case people don't want to watch the whole thing. Around 50 minutes to an hour. I'll come back and back to it.
Yeah, we're exactly about 50 some odd minutes. Real quick, so Casey, to clarify your position, is your position on property dualism, do you think that there's a relationship for different properties of mental, physical? Are you epiphenomenalist, non-epiphenomenalist? What position do you have as far as the state of a physical thing affecting, or the mental things expecting a physical state?
I take the position that consciousness is an emergent property of physical interactions in the brain.
Which is the dominant view, is it not?
I don't know. I would have to look at the surveys.
It is the dominant ideological view of the moment, but it can't be justified scientifically. That's what I think. And so it's merely an ideological belief. And it's a problem, because it stunts research. And it's one of the reasons scientific naturalism is on its way out. And more researchers, particularly young ones, and by young, I mean in their 40s, are really champing at the bit, because among both young scientists, very young, just coming out of into their postdocs, and middle-aged guys about my age, who aren't the ones in control for the most part, are really sick of the gray-haired materialist scientific naturalists and their what they perceive as their bullying and their ideological flaws and their blinkers, because they don't believe scientific naturalism. Teleology is making a big comeback because it makes sense. The classical view is making a big comeback, and quite a few scientists are showing great progress doing things that way. So I think it should be admitted that the ideological biases of those who are currently dominant in the field must be taken into account when looking at anything like that, especially, and that was the point I was making about the widespread reports, how prevalent they are or not, the widespread reports of even very distinguished scientists being insulted and even deplatformed for not being atheist. And really, the ideological atheism that's at the top of most of academia these days, I think you're going to find an awful lot of people are very smart people are pushing against it. Because scientific naturalism is out of gas and hasn't made any of its promises, lived up to any of its promises.
Max, let me ask you, because we are getting over an hour here. So
oh, yeah. I've got about another half hour.
Okay, so your complaint is about more that science, because it adheres to methodological naturalism, that you think that there should be a movement away from that. Is that what you're saying?
Methodological naturalism is a somewhat different topic than scientific naturalism as a whole. I would certainly say that naturalism is on its way out, because clearly everything doesn't follow the laws of physics. And there's ample reasons within current physics to believe that there is reality beyond this reality. A great one for you to bring in to talk to about this, if you haven't had him on before, he's very much an idealist and he's very much a quantum physics guy, but Johann Ratz is a very interesting man to talk to, and he knows a lot.
He also frequently misrepresents quantum mechanics, as does inspiring philosophy.
Yeah, I don't believe that claim, sir. I think you're just an atheist ideologue, and you should prove it. I don't believe you.
Okay.
I believe you're misrepresenting these men, okay. And then you're actually deceiving your audience when you claim there's no good evidence for a God or a supernatural or an afterlife. You're not being honest unless you say good in my entirely personal opinion, which has no scientific basis at all, because it doesn't.
It's a philosophical basis.
That's correct.
Based in the philosophy of science.
Yeah, exactly. It's a philosophical position, and that is all it is. It's simply what you believe. It is, in fact, your faith position. And the
Not
way
really.
you develop, yes, it is.
Ontology, my commitment to ontological naturalism is parameterized by my methodology, my methodological naturalism. That's to say that whatever I'm justified in saying actually exists is parameterized, is constrained by the methods that I use in order to establish the existence of these things.
Right. Since you're a naturalist, that's a freight train full of assumptions that you can't prove scientifically. They're merely axioms you commit to do the work the way you do it.
I don't think you're paying attention. What I'm saying is that the methods that I use in order to establish what exists, the scientific methods, this is what is setting the boundaries for what I can justifiably say exists. And this holds true regardless of what methodology I employ. Maybe you're a methodological pluralist. Maybe you think that methodological naturalism and some other methodologies, maybe perhaps phenomenology is an example of methodological idealism, so is deconstruction. I don't subscribe to either of these. Maybe you do. I don't know. But maybe you hold to a plurality of methodologies, and those expand sort of what you think is capable of existing. It seems to me to be nonsensical to say that you can use science, you can use methodological naturalism to establish the existence of the non-natural, since the methodology is what parameterizes the ontology.
Yeah, well, that's that, and if that is your requirement, then that's a limit.
It's not my requirement; it's my objection.
That's a requirement of methodological naturalism. It's not a requirement of science.
No, my objection more generally is that whatever methodology you're using, this sets the constraints for what you're capable of saying exists.
Quite so.
Yes. So if I'm using methodological naturalism, science, and only methodological naturalism, then I get to only say that the natural exists. However, you've made the claims several times in this stream that science, aka methodological naturalism, can establish the existence of the non-natural, things that fall outside of this boundary. And that seems to me to not follow.
Casey, do you agree that if you have methodological naturalism, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have ontological naturalism or philosophical naturalism? One does not entail the other, or that's just your belief that the ontology follows from your methodological approach?
The ontology does follow from the methodological approach, but if you have multiple methodologies, if you have not just methodological naturalism, but other methodologies, I named a couple like phenomenology and deconstruction, then you can also you can be an ontological pluralist, or maybe you can subsume things under a more broader metaphysic. So let's say for the sake of argument that somebody both accepts the scientific method, or methods, I should say, and they also accept, say, deconstructionism for whatever reason. There's some wackos in the academy who do. Then, in that case, you have both. You can say that both the physical world exists and a non-physical world exists, and you can either subscribe to that point to some kind of dualism, or you can say that one subsumes the other, as the idealist does. They'll say that the natural is the product of the mind. My claim is that if they're going to make the claim that the natural is the product of the mind, that whatever they're establishing, whatever they're using to establish the idealism component of their ontology, that cannot come from a naturalistic approach. They have to use something else, and I want to know what it is he's using to arrive at idealism.
Well, let's establish. I don't want to mischaracterize Max here. Max, are you an idealist? I mean, do you follow more idealism over realism?
To be honest, I don't take a strong position on either one. I just know both are superior to materialism, which is errant nonsense. And idealism does make the most sense to me, but I'm not going to claim that it's my main thing. I also want to address something that I think cannot be allowed to slip. The repeat insinuation that methodological naturalism is science is garbage, and you shouldn't do that. You're misleading your audience if you make that extraordinary leap. Methodological naturalism is not science. It is a set of strategies for doing science, and that is all it is. It is not science, and anybody saying that it is lying to his audience. And misrepresenting science.
Just to clarify,
methodological naturalism is a way of doing science.
Right.
It is
methodological naturalism is a philosophy of science.
Which starts with the assumption that there is no supernatural, there is no God, there is no afterlife.
No. That's the methodology. No. What you're describing right now, the assumption, this is metaphysical or ontological naturalism.
Right.
I'm not beginning, though, with ontological naturalism. I'm beginning with methodological naturalism. I'm saying that there's a certain set of strategies that, yes, the scientific enterprise employs. And as far as I can tell, this is the only set of strategies which produces reliable belief. Consequently, the only things that I can reliably say exist are the things constrained by this methodology. In other words, I am an ontological naturalist because of my methodological naturalism and not the other way around.
Right. He's saying that his ontological naturalism falls from the methodological naturalist, and I think Max, you're thinking it's the other way around with him. Now, what would you rather have science do? If science doesn't ascribe to methodological naturalism, why, if you remove that, how would it approach finding out an explanation for an observed phenomenon?
Okay, now, wait a minute. I'm going to assert again, methodological naturalism is absolutely not science. And every time I use methodological naturalism, science.
Okay, I don't say methodological naturalism is science. Hang on, real quick. I am not advocating that methodological naturalism is science. Okay. I believe that. Hang on. Methodological naturalism is the philosophy of science. It is not science itself.
Methodological naturalism is not.
It is literally the philosophy. It is literally the philosophy of science. Yes.
No, it isn't.
Well, let me just jump in here really quick. It sounds like what you're suggesting is that in addition to methodological naturalism, science can operate via other methodologies, that perhaps methodological naturalism is too narrow and too constrained. And
because methodological naturalism starts with a set of axiomatic presuppositions, whether the person advocating it admits it or not.
No, you're confusing it with ontological naturalism.
No, I'm sorry. Your methodological naturalism starts with these ontological assumptions. And that's where there's no evidence because we have. No, I'm sorry.
You're getting it backwards. My methodology precedes my ontology, not the other way around.
You can say that, but I don't believe it because I don't believe it's possible to do so.
Why not?
Sorry. Are you starting with the presumption that there is a supernatural, that there is an afterlife, and that there is an intelligence running the universe? Are you willing to accept those as starting propositions? Because
at that point,
you're axiomatically rejecting these propositions.
At that point, I would be committing myself to an ontological position. But I don't begin with my ontologies. I begin with my methodologies. If you can demonstrate that there is an alternative methodology to methodological naturalism that allows for the existence of all of the supernatural stuff, then I will expand my ontology. I will revise it to incorporate that.
All right,
but my ontology is not subject to change until I find a satisfactory methodology in order to pin onto or replace my current one.
Right. It still sounds exactly like you're saying you've started with your ideological presuppositions, and then you use your methods and say you won't re-examine those presuppositions until you're given evidence that you personally find satisfaction to re-examine those axioms. That's all I'm hearing.
Again, all I'm starting with is the observation that when I employ this set of strategies, as you described, this methodological naturalism, when I employ it, I arrive at a set of reliable conclusions, at a set of reliable beliefs. I acknowledge that there might be other methodologies, okay? That there might be other ways of looking at things, like, for example, phenomenology and deconstruction. I don't accept these, but I know these things exist. I know there are other methodologies that some people employ, and that these things have the potential to bring me justifiable beliefs. I'm only beginning with the observation that methodological naturalism is the only one that, when I apply, I observe provides me with data that I can accurately predict. Okay, so I'm not beginning with the presupposition that methodological naturalism is the way to start. It's the only way to go. I'm beginning with the observation that this appears to be the only one that gives me results. My question to you is, what other methodologies produce good results?
All right, I'm going to need to get back to you on this because you are using specialist terminology, and I'm not coming here to advocate another specific school. But I will get back to you on that because I have friends who are philosophers and scientists. We'll tell you what so I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
I'll just repeat. Methodological naturalism is not science. It is a set of strategies that scientists use, and not all scientists adhere to them. And I'll be glad to get back to you on that and give you examples of specifics.
Just to clarify, Crocoduck, are you advocating that methodological naturalism is science, or are you taking my position that when I say that it is a philosophical approach to science?
I would say that science. I would say science is based upon methodological naturalism, but I might be wrong. Maybe he can show me that there, or his philosopher friends can show me that there are alternative methodologies which will allow me to expand my ontology in order to incorporate their supernatural and their God. My metaphysic is not a speculative one. When I say that I'm an ontological naturalist, it's not because I'm beginning with a presupposition. It's because I'm beginning with a set of observations, and these observations constrain what I'm allowed to say is true.
What would you call that, Max? If you decided to get rid of methodological naturalism and allow for a more expansive ontology, what would you call that particular type of philosophy of science to be able to even bring in the concept of the supernatural?
What I would say is get rid of methodological naturalism. Nonsense. It's a perfectly useful set of strategies and presuppositions for approaching certain types of inquiry. But I mean, when you, for example, run a psychological study, let's say you run a psychological study on the phenomenon of depression, it's really hard to use scientific naturalism on that, or even methodological naturalism, because ultimately you have a subjective state that you have only limited ways of describing. Although maybe you could, you say, okay, did this treatment work for we got 100 patients and we tried this treatment and 30 of them got relief from their 30% got relief from their depression on this one, and 70% in the placebo group, and 70% did in the non-placebo group. There's no, ultimately you're still measuring things like, are they grumpy, are they staying in bed all day, and do they report being depressed, or etc. You're measuring intangibles there. You're measuring subjective states. You can't use, and so, I mean, that's just one example of something where you're not measuring anything physical.
But to
the best of my knowledge, whatever Crocoduck's personal opinion is, to the best of my knowledge, and every source I've seen says that methodological naturalism does start with the very presuppositions that I gave. So he thinks they don't start with those presuppositions. It seems logical and observable, and you can look at other sources. I'll say it does begin with those presuppositions. But those presuppositions immediately constrain you to what you can see within the four forces of physics. That's
let me see if we can clarify a little bit, because you're suggesting that intangibles somehow relate to supernaturalism, which I don't think the argument that Casey's making. I think that obviously it's intangibles. But how do you go? I think what Casey's asking, if we can clarify, is that how would you approach figuring out which are just intangibles and which ones are actually a metaphysical or supernatural type of causation for something? How would you even determine if there's a causal mechanism for supernaturalism to whatever you're trying to figure out an explanation for?
Well, using forensics, for example, is one area where you could do that. I'm not a complete expert on the subject of forensics, but forensics often works along those lines. So, I mean, science is actually a difficult topic to pin down. I recommend the Stanford Encyclopedia, Stanford Dictionary of Encyclopedia Online is a good start on that. Because, I mean, the scientific method, as I understand it, is that you make an observation, you construct a hypothesis, and then you see if you can replicate, you can prove that hypothesis by replicating it, and replicating it reliably. Karl Popper came in advocating falsification, but you talk to working scientists and just look at most of the sciences out there. That most of what we accept as science now is not falsifiable. In Popperian terms, anyway, it's simply observational, and most scientists don't use Popper's methods in the real world, from what I've seen.
I will give a charitable kind of commentary on that. I agree that people don't use Popperian methodology. I agree that his deductivist program, as outlined in his book Conjectures and Refutations, is not what scientists actually employ, and that the reality is closer to what Kuhn suggested in the structure of scientific revolutions. That being said, I do think that scientific theories and scientific hypotheses are falsifiable. I don't think that it can be science if it isn't falsifiable. I'm not saying that the program, goes about, we look for hypotheses that, let's see if we can falsify this, but that's not how we go about doing it. But whatever models we create of the world, they do have to be falsifiable in order to be scientific.
Okay, so if I understand your conclusion seriously, it must be falsifiable or it's not science, and it also must be rooted in methodological naturalism as far as you know, because you can't think of any other way of doing it. Would that fundamentally be where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Let me think about that. You're actually bringing good challenges, which I enjoy because I don't get a lot of them.
Yeah, I think those are fair questions, and I think that,
they are very fair questions, and I want to think about them. I don't present myself as an expert on everything, but I do got friends I can go to and check with too. So let's leave it. This might be a good place to leave it. Maybe we come back, or I'll make a video. If you don't want me to come back, I can make a video.
We'll have you back.
One more thing, if I can shamelessly plug myself, I do go into a little bit of depth into sort of. What I guess you could call the post-positivist philosophy of science. I go in depth with that in my video, Is Science a Social Construct? Spoiler, the answer is no. But just check out my channel. You'll see Neil deGrasse Tyson sort of doing a facepalm.
What was it again? You think science is not a social construct, or it is a social construct?
Is not. At least not in the sense that the crazies say.
See, I think there's something to be said for it to be a social construct, but that's a different argument.
Well, it's more like how you do the science is the social construct, and we're always messing with that. And sometimes we're going back to we're inventing new methods. Sometimes we're going back to old methods because the new methods weren't as good as we thought they were. And in fact, I would think that we would probably agree on this: is that science has to constantly retest itself and re-examine itself and see where it is, the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, it has to do that all the time, is what I'm saying. And I think every generation does that. And so I'm always very dicey when somebody starts asserting what science is or isn't, because I just know too many scientists, including successful ones. Can I suggest another guy to bring on here? Guy Sartre. He would be a great video and probably a neat one to talk with Crocoduck here, because Guy's a biochemist and also a former atheist who now truly believes a guiding intelligence is operating the universe.
Could you spell his last name for me?
Yeah,
we'll definitely look into that.
Garte. You know what? Send me an email. I'll be happy to give you an introduction. He's a really nice guy. He's nicer than me. I am abrasive. I'm sorry. I'm a cranky old man.
It's fine. I too like to shitpost.
Casey is a master shitposter. Yes.
His name is Cy Gart, S-Y. I think it's short for Seymour or something, but he goes Cy, S-Y, Gart, G-A-R-T or G-A-R-T-E. He's in his 70s. He's balding. He's a former red diaper baby. He's really fun to talk to.
Oh, no, not balding.
Yeah, I'm afraid he's balding.
Oh, no.
Well, we can start wrapping it up, but if we have any questions, let's see if we can knock them out real quick. I didn't get anything through Twitter, so if anybody on the live feed, ask them now or forever hold your peace until we get these two gentlemen back. Because I can ask questions all night long. There's probably about 6 more hours of content that I would actually love to see
Crocoduck talk to. I would love to see Crocoduck talk to Cy. He's a real nice guy. They'll like each other. But anyway, I'll shut up now.
Oh, you're good, Max. We appreciate you. While he's waiting on questions, we appreciate you both taking the time to come on and do this. It was a fascinating discussion, and I think you both handled each other pretty well. In terms of not stepping over one another and at least respecting that aspect.
And by the way, we will have Christian apologist on when she's available. She's been and myself have been talking, and we will arrange something for her. More than welcome to have her on. I know she's a friend of yours, Max. She's on your channel often.
Stephanie?
Christian apologist, SJ. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, SJ. Yeah, she's. Yeah, I like Stephanie a lot. She's not a scientist, but she's a. What's her degree in? Some kind of business thing.
Business.
She does a lot of stuff, yeah. But she does a lot of stuff with advanced calc and economics. So she's interesting that way. Okay, well, I'll put. In fact, if you guys send me an email, just Skype me and we'll chat. I got a few other people that might be good interviews for you. Another good one is my astrophysicist friend Sarah Salviander. She's awesome to talk.
We know of her. Yep.
I spoke.
We've already talked. Yep.
I love astrophysicists. Yes, let's talk to her.
Yeah, she's willing to come on, I think.
She's really nice. And by the way, I will tell you, she's very shy. So she has to make sure she trusts you, that you're not going to be mean and whatnot, but she's awesome.
That leaves Casey out. No, I'm just kidding.
And yeah, we'll chat later. Thank you very much for the time. Sure. I know it got heated, but you know what?
That's okay.
Religion and politics are things you should never talk about because they piss people off. And actually, religion and politics are things you should always talk about because they piss people off.
Yeah, I never take these things personally. So this is just we're taking our ideas, we're smashing them against each other, and the process is necessarily messy. So it's just the way it is.
I, on the other hand, will be at your house this weekend to burn you at the stake as a heretic. So.
That's okay. I'll be waiting with my loaded magnum.
All right, I like that. All right, I'll talk to you later, guys.
All right, thank you.
All right, guys.
All right. And we will be having some type of after show. We just haven't decided yet on what channel it's going to be. So stay tuned for that. But I don't think anybody had any questions on that, which is kind of surprising because there was so much they had discussed, and yet they really didn't even scratch the surface on a lot of the topics that they were talking about.
Yeah, I got all these. I took all these notes of inspiring philosophy for nothing.
Well, maybe not. There's, I think this is a to be continued. Like Steve said, I think there are hours and hours and hours more that you could probably go. It's just finding that cutoff point. I think is the hard part.
This was a fast 90 minutes. I'm just amazed.
As long as he doesn't pull a Kent Hovind.
No, he'll come back. But anyways, we'll start wrapping this up. If you guys want to have an after show, give us about 15 minutes or so. It'll either be on this channel, the Great Debate Community channel, or my channel. We don't know yet. Whatever you guys want, let me know. Send me a message. But I do want to thank Max for coming in and having the discussion, even though he's already left. But if he watches this later, thank you, Max. Red Pill Religion. The video link to his channel is in the description. So go subscribe to him. Make sure you're going to subscribe to King Crocoduck as well. We got to get him up to like 60,000 subs. He hasn't really moved much because he's been so busy with other stuff. Because he's
I'm already past 60,000. What are you talking about?
Are you past 60? Are you really?
Come on, Steve.
Way to be informed, Steve.
Okay, let's get about 70 then. Let's get about 100. Come on.
And I want to make an announcement real quick to remind everyone that on Friday, the 13th in April, we will be hosting the first ever Kent Hovind roast, and we've got a lot of things planned for that. A lot of content creators are kind of coming together for that, so it's going to be a really, really, really good time. And I believe that King Crocoduck has quite the history with Mr. Hovind, so
they've never spoken. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, and if you guys are interested in that, if you're a content creator and you want to be part of the Kent Hovind roast and you want to do a little video on it, you want to come on the program, whatever it is, let us know. Right now we have a crap ton of people that want to be involved, so we don't mind. Come on in.
That's it.
It's gonna be fun. All right, with that, guys, I think we'll see you for the after show. Stay tuned for that. Like I said, if you'll subscribe to this channel, my channel, and the Great Debate Community channel, it'll be on one of those.
And the Geek Room.
Oh, and of course, yes, how could we forget our lovely producer here, Frankie from the Geek Room? Make sure you go subscribe to him. We'll put his link in the video description if it's not already. It should be. And then make sure that you go subscribe to him. The Geek Room is a great program. Fantastic. They have shows like almost, I think it's twice a week now, Frankie, you're doing?
Yeah, twice a week. On Tuesdays and Saturdays so far.
If you're not watching the Geek Room, you are certainly missing out. So, and King Crocoduck, once again, Thank you for coming in. Always a pleasure. And I think
Sure.
with that,
I'll
we'll say
join the
goodnight.
after show. I'll be in the after show, just so everyone knows.
Okay, we'll give the link out in probably about 15 minutes. It'll be in the video description.
All right. Porn music time.
Yes.
Wow, chicka, wow, wow. Bow, chicka, wow, wow.
I'm sorry I let everybody see that. All right, bye.